wants to play, and Bruce Tate doesn't know that. The game's going to end on this play. He fires downfield. It's caught, and into the end zone. Goes to the end zone. Lobs it to the far corner. It's caught. Offset eye. Ross throws a block for Sargent. He's going to crawl over that goal line. Burrows in for a touchdown.
What's up, Iowa fans? Welcome into the Play the Fight Song fan perspective on the Iowa side here after a good win against Northwestern, going into the Heartland Trophy battle with Wisconsin. Going to be a ton of fun, tons to get to here in this episode here. Welcome into the Play the Fight Song family. If you haven't seen us before, we are a weekly college football show where we talk the entire country, all G5 through the Power 4 conferences, as well as some podcasts on the fan perspective side, as you're seeing with Iowa, Iowa State, and Nebraska. It's awesome stuff. We want to give you our perspective as a fan, a little closer to the program. We're not media members or anything like that, but we're having a ton of fun doing it. Weekly college football show airing live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and some other platforms on Wednesday nights. That releases in podcast form. Anywhere you can find your podcast, you can find our recap episodes, our live episodes for previews, and each fan perspective on those spots. So thank you for joining in. If you're watching here on YouTube, if you're listening on the podcast feed, please give us a like, give us a rating on the podcast feed, leave a comment in the YouTube, subscribe there, like the video. It's a ton of fun that we do this. Just a little support on your end. It goes a long ways in helping us grow as a brand and get better at what we're doing every time. So love the interaction that we get from people, and it's been a ton of fun doing this. So let's get into this one. I'm going to start with a recap, a little bit of Northwestern. I'm recording this Monday, so Ferentz hasn't taken the stand Tuesday yet for his normal weekly stuff. Obviously, we're going to learn a lot of different things about what he thought about last week, as well as going into the Wisconsin week and the status of the Hawks in a lot of ways. But we're going to do a quick recap of the Northwestern game, because I think it's a little fitting just based on everything that happened in that one. Iowa's defense bows up again. That's the defense we were looking for. Obviously, Michigan State's offense that had a heyday the week before is a lot better than this Northwestern one that we saw. But 43 yards rushing is nothing to bat an eye at. And then 62 yards passing from Lush. Your starter throws for less than 70 yards against an Iowa defense. I mean, that just kind of tells you, honestly, just Northwestern's lacking a lot of talent right now. And that's just the blatant honesty of it. And I think they know that. And they've struggled with everybody they've played. So it's just good that Iowa didn't let things kind of spiral after that first drive. We're missing a lot of tackles. Missed field goal kind of bails us out in that situation. Tiny momentum shift, and then we roll into that one. And the only points that Iowa gives up are on a kick return or a punt return, and a pick six off of McNamara. No defensive points given up. That's a ton of fun to watch anytime that happens. I know Phil's jumping up and down on that one. Quinn Schulte, welcome to the defense, man. Guy looked good. He was, I believe, Pro Football Focus, his highest rated safety this week. And to be completely honest with you, I think he had a pick this week as well. Dropped one at Michigan State. He kind of seems like a guy who's just kind of been hanging around. Hasn't done anything to really up this defense yet, and it's been a part of some issues on the back end there, which is why we haven't seen Wampa as much. We've seen Schulte more. Entringer's been banged up a little bit, but welcome to the defense. Good week out of him. Hopefully we can keep that thing rolling for him, as when he's better, the defense is better just based on the position he's playing. Opened up the run game in the second half. Again, kind of a tale of two halves. You got, Iowa in the first half that was struggling to run the ball on 7-8 man boxes. A lot of linemen getting beat cross face and closing holes fast. The linebackers were able to get into the gaps and shut that down for KJ pretty quick, as well as any other running backs, and Cade getting under pressure as well. There was a lot going on there, and I think just a simple change, as well as some scheme things, hitting things in play action or downfield, changed some things in the run game, and you saw KJ kind of have a chance to get into those gaps and make guys miss, then run through a couple of them as well. So tale of two halves in the run game once again. We're hoping that can start to become more of a full game thing. Obviously, if you're an Iowa fan, the thought of the run game not being the thought of the run game struggling scares you a ton, because the pass game's just been absent. So if we struggle at all in the run game and it's not, over 4 yards a carry, it's panic mode. And so I completely understand that there. obvious quarterback change, right? Like that's the obvious one that everybody's touched on anywhere you've seen any media around the University of Iowa. It's been the quarterback change. Probably the right move. Had been the right move for a couple of weeks, and it turned out to be the right one there. Thank goodness Kirk stuck with him after a couple tough drives to start. You could tell things were going. He just wasn't getting a fair shake. They were getting a ton of pressure on him, a couple mistakes in some spots from guys, and all of a sudden, scoring drive, right? Like it was perfect. It really went well. You kind of put away a team who wasn't bad defensively, but anytime they played somebody with more than just a pulse on the offensive side, they're giving up points. And so that was good to see that Iowa can buckle up and kind of lock into that and play good offense and move the football. Um, there's a lot of things that happen offensively too. Like you didn't have Vanderzee for most of the second half. It doesn't sound like he's going to play this week at all. Just the inside that I'm hearing off some of the message boards and things like that is that it might be a stress fracture. I don't want to assume, but that's just the rumor going around at the moment. So that's tough because he'd been good, really good, and to get that guy as a number one right now definitely helps this offense. Let's talk now into kind of as a full picture of the game. You take it for what it is. You beat a team that wasn't very talented. You beat them well. You made the switch at quarterback. Now you have to stay on that and continue to win football games. Like it's lost in some ways that you're probably not a playoff team at this moment in time. You're probably not a playoff team this year with 3 losses. There's not really a big spot to get a marquee win anymore, but you are a team that can start building, and just put a scare into some teams. And hopefully if you end this thing 9-3 with some good wins, find yourself in a decent spot. So going to be a ton of fun. And I'm pumped for this weekend because I think it's one of the biggest challenges we've seen yet this year. And I'm not sure how the Wisconsin-Nebraska thing matches up on what team's better, but I think this is one of the better teams we'll see on the schedule for the rest of the year. So let's do that. Let's jump into the Wisconsin Badgers. About Wisconsin right now, 5-3, 3-2 in conference, exact same record as Iowa. Obviously, they've played a much tougher schedule. They've already seen USC. They just got done playing Penn State. It's been a tougher schedule than what Iowa's seen. If we're being completely honest, they had Alabama hosted at home. There's their 3 losses: USC, Penn State, Alabama. Iowa State, Michigan State, Ohio State. So there's a little difference there on your wins there and quality losses and stuff like that. But it's not like they had a shot to win that game if they're playing an easier schedule. They've kind of been up and down as well. Last week fell 28-13 to Penn State. They had a chance late in that game to stay within a score. Braden Locke threw a tough INT in that one as well in the second half that just kind of changed the game, and that was it. And so listening to some of the podcasts and reaction shows from Wisconsin fans, I think the sentiment wasn't that they're super upset exactly at Locke himself. I mean, they're upset with the ball he threw. I mean, no sense. It was bad. But I would like to tell you, Wisconsin fans, if you're in here saying that's the worst pass you've seen by a Division I quarterback, I'd like you to meet your fan base a little to your south, the black and gold, who's seen some of the actual worst passing you've ever seen in your life from some quarterbacks in the recent years. Last week included in that. So count your chickens, all right? Like, don't worry about it too much. But this is a Wisconsin team who expected the 7-8 win range probably coming into the season. Luke Fickell in his second year, again, dealing with quarterback issues. They brought in Tyler Van Dyke. He goes down early in the season with an ankle and done for the year. And now it's just Braden Locke, right? So there is some issues there. They feel like in some spots they're a quarterback away from a really good team. They also lost Ches Malusi, but they found a good replacement for him in the backfield. You know, Wisconsin always finds a way to get good backs, kind of like Iowa. I think Iowa has had good, solid backs. I think Wisconsin thinks their history is a little more of elite running backs, and they probably have some room to argue right there. You've seen the absolute monsters they've had run through Madison over the years. It's still a very balanced team, very complimentary team in how they play things. I think when the Phil Longo hire happened, it was like air raid. Yeah, that's true. But if you go look at their numbers and the play calling scheme around everything, it's been pretty balanced, and Fickell's been able to really keep them really well coached. They don't beat themselves a ton. Penalty wise, like they've made mistakes at the quarterback position, some other spots, but they're still a team that plays good defense as well as hoping to continue drives and have a pretty solid offense in the rush game and through the air. So a thing again there, tale two halves in some ways. Like Iowa's had the same problem. Wisconsin's also had the same problem. Think about their game at USC. They were in that thing for a half. Second half happens, not so much anymore. And then you also think about last week against Penn State. Good first half, leading at halftime. Turn the page. Kotelnicki and company and James Franklin make adjustments, and Phil Longo, Fickle, and these guys don't. And it just ends up beating them into the ground. -4 yards rushing in the second half. Not great, Bob. And then it's just been it's interesting because it feels like Iowa and Wisconsin have such similarities around them and what they do as a team and how they are identifying themselves as who they are and what they do every week. To be honest with you, like this Wisconsin team feels like they're more than just a quarterback away from being really, really good. But Wisconsin thinks they're just a quarterback away. I think they have some other issues along it. I don't think the offensive line's as good as it had been in the past. I think the linebacking core is decent, but it's lacking elite on the linebacking core. There's some good defensive players on this team. Don't get me wrong. But I think they've always had an elite pass rusher or linebacker somewhere on this Badger defense that's really scared Iowa every single year, and rightfully so. Let's talk about offense a little bit more for Wisconsin here. Phil Longo, the OC, as I was talking about, rankings for them specifically, they're ranked 69th in yards per game at 939 or 393. 939 would be crazy as hell. 46 in rush yards a game at 179.9, 83rd in pass yards a game at 213, 97th in completion percentage. Let's go right into Braden Locke. Like if we're going to talk about a 97th in completion percentage, that's because it's 57.6. Yeah, not great. We've seen plenty of quarterbacks like that at the University of Iowa. 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Again, Wisconsin fans not super happy with him at the moment. They feel like he was not supposed to be the answer. It was supposed to be Van Dyke. Van Dyke obviously goes out early, shows flashes at times, does Braden Locke, but it's never been he's the guy that Wisconsin's going to go with going forward. It's just kind of the moment and spot that they're in at this time with who he is and who they are as a program right now. Iowa, like I'm telling you, gave him fits last year, and it's got to be a little worrisome if you're a Wisconsin fan. I know you have better receivers on the outside, and we'll get to some of them because I think this receiving core is pretty darn good. I think you'd be worried about just Braden Locke reading the defense and taking what's given to him and not trying to stretch things too much and make too many plays because we've seen Iowa beat teams like that. And then we'll talk about the flip side of that here later as well. Tyree Walker, your running back there, 126 rushes for 624 and 10 touchdowns. Been a really good back for them this year after the Malusi injury. And I think this kid, as a senior, like if you had a couple more years with him, it feels like this could be better and better. But he's definitely been the bright spot about this offense and really working to keep Braden Locke's life a little bit easier, and it just hasn't worked out that way. Let's go to the receiver room. Will Pauling, Vinny Anthony, the two guys I want to mention, two really good receivers, two guys with great size, as well as the ability to go up and get a football and stretch the defense vertically. So Iowa's going to have to pay attention. I told you I'd get to the other side of that. Like Iowa's been susceptible to some bigger plays through the air this year. You watched Iowa State do it. You watched Troy do it. You watched Ohio State do it. You watched Michigan State do it. Wisconsin has the athletes on the outside to do it. Now, can they get a guy to put on their hands or in their chest downfield in Braden Locke? Don't know, but we're going to find out because if I'm Wisconsin, I'm definitely not shying away from that right now, seeing that could be an opportunity for them to move the football and make up for maybe some shorter drives or flip and field opportunities. So pay attention to that. But again, watch these Wisconsin receivers, especially with Iowa's issues at the quarterback or cornerback 2 position. Whether that's TJ Hall, whether that's Deshaun Lee. Sounds like the Nestor kid may not play this week. Kind of up in the air still. Again, this is before Ferentz's presser on Tuesday. But there are some opportunities here for Wisconsin for sure, right? Like the offensive line I was talking about wasn't great, but it's still a good offensive line. And Iowa hasn't been great about getting pressure on the quarterback with bringing just 4. And then at times the run game's kind of been gashed because the defensive line's not in certain gaps. There's an opportunity for Wisconsin, and I'm confident what Iowa can do. I'm sure Wisconsin's feeling like, hey, we got a little bit better in that first half. We can continue that over into the Iowa game. We have a real shot to win that thing in Iowa City. That's fair. Completely get it. Defensively, Very resurgent. Like they've had a better year defensively than I thought they would for sure. They're 48th in yards per play, giving up over 5 yards a play. Um, this is where the struggles kind of happen defensively. 87th in yards a rush, 4.4. Iowa wants to eat that for lunch. Like that's what they want to do. They want to run the football between the tackles and even get outside and stretching things out with Caleb Johnson. Moulton's gotten some more carries here. And then if Solomon starts, you have the ability to run a quarterback a little bit on the edges. And I think that also creates some issues. Wisconsin also has not been able to get a ton of pressure on the quarterback. They got 1.6 yards a game or 1.6 sacks a game. That's ranking near 100th in the FBS. So it's not great. This is a team that's usually good at getting out of the court, getting after the quarterback, and can do it with 3 or 4 guys rather than having to bring 5 or 6. Kind of like an issue we're seeing with Iowa this year. Let's jump to the Iowa side of things. Getting kind of to a point where there's some real hope here, but it feels like is the hope a little too late in some spots, right? Like the switch to Sullivan, the running game getting going a little bit more. And then it felt like the defense has kind of found their footing a little bit more. And then we take the Michigan State step back, and then we dominate a team like Northwestern, who's not great offensively, but it gives you a chance to kind of think like, oh, you're back a little bit more. Up and down, up and down. As I was talking about, no Vandersdee this week, it doesn't sound like, or John Nestor. Kyler Fisher's set to return, it sounds like. So we'll have him back to put in the cash position. Sullivan should start. Again, there's a rumor about his hand being messed up. There's also a rumor about Cade being a little banged up. Ain't going to matter. One of them's going to play, but it's got to be Sullivan. If you're Kirk, you just got proven like that was, it was proven that was the right move in that game. And we can't go backwards in that unless this hand injury is legit for Sullivan in some ways. Then I'm not feeling great in some spots. Caleb Johnson continued success. Once you got some area for him to run, he's not getting hit 4 yards in the backfield. He's going to run through some guys. He could find the holes and gaps perfectly in the offensive line and then put a couple stiff arms on some guys in the second level. Kid's good. I mean, that's simple as that. Let's talk full game, breaking it down a little bit more. Wisconsin, there is opportunities. I talked about this a little bit. There's opportunities for big plays through the air as Iowa hasn't found the pass rush. And if they can just keep Iowa off of Locke and let him sit in the pocket a little bit cleaner, and maybe he does make some good throws. Maybe they're short, like Washington was with a chance to get downfield. Just don't make the wrong read. Don't make the mistake. Just stay with drives and go that way. I think they'll have a better run game than Washington did. Again, I think the back, Jonah Coleman's a little bit better of a back than Tyree Walker is, but I feel like Wisconsin has the better offensive line in this spot. Can Iowa run it on the Wisconsin front? It's a great question. I'd love to say they can based on the stats I'm seeing in front of them. Obviously, they've played a tougher schedule. But Tim Lesser's been really good at trying to get things done. And after, even with the quarterback who has literally not threatened the defense at all, or an offense at times who's not threatening to do anything but stay between the tackles, they've found some lanes and stuff. Obviously, that's been blown up a time or two. You saw it in the Northwestern game too. Like they were in every gaps immediately. And it just ate Iowa's offense alive. And so if we can get away, basically what I'm saying, I trust that guy to go figure it out, right? I trust Lesser to go figure that one out and really beat this Wisconsin team. Teams are really familiar with each other. And so Lester's the new guy here. Let's see what he can do and what he can draw up. Tale of two halves for both teams, as I was talking about, like these teams need to put a whole game together. And if Iowa can do that, they feel really good. If Wisconsin can do that, they feel really good. What happens if they both play pretty good halves and it's low scoring again, like it feels like it always is? Last year in Madison was like that. The year before that in Iowa City was like that. It just feels like these teams are so familiar with each other and they play such a similar brand of football. It's going to be very, very hard for it to go any other way than low scoring and tight. So I'm excited to see this one in Iowa City. A 6:30 kick, another night game for the Hawks. I think they got 2 more after this, undecided on the North or the Maryland time yet. Feels like that'll be 11 a.m. or 2:30, but 3 more night games for the Hawks: Wisconsin, Maryland, Nebraska, or Wisconsin, UCLA, Nebraska. Maryland's still up in the air. Pumped to see how this one goes. Anytime you beat Wisconsin, get another trophy, it's a great time. It's going to be tough. I think both teams are trying to find a little more identity, get their footing a little bit even more going into the last couple weeks of the season. As always, thank you guys for joining in, listening here, anywhere you get your podcast, YouTube, Facebook, X. Been a ton of fun. Thanks for joining us in. Again, join us on at Play the Fight Pod on all socials for that. And then you can check out our live show Wednesday nights. We cover the entire sport as a whole. Been a ton of fun. Appreciate everybody joining in. Appreciate everybody talking through everything with us. And let's give a shout out to our sponsors actually here. No Rivals, shopnorivals.com. Use code PTFS. Again, there are Iowa hats on here. We are the only one through the Play the Fight Song brand with actual hats on there. Code PTFS will get you free shipping. Start buying your Christmas gifts. Start buying gifts for you for the back end of the season, through basketball season, through football season. It's going to be a ton of fun. Appreciate everybody joining in. Go Hawks.